Our first talk today is by Dr. Daniel Minkin, and it's a generalist repressive research program in the research on conspiracy theories, German failures, and Tasmanian teachings. Daniel, please take it away.
Thank you very much, and thank you for organizing this very important conference. I will talk about some topics and perhaps make some claims that have already been made during the conference, but I think my talk will also contain some new thoughts that I hope will be interesting for you. I will read my presentation out, which is a little easier for me. Okay. I have been working on conspiracy theories and conspiracy theories for about 4 years, and at first I have familiarized myself with the debate, but now I have reached a point where I can present and, as I hope, defend my own position on the topic. To clarify my position, I would like to start with a proposal for structuring the interdisciplinary debate on conspiracy theories. I assume that the central question in this debate is the following one: what attitude should we take toward conspiracy theories? Against this backdrop, there are different proposals for structuring the debate. On the first day, Nikki Pfeiffer made a very interesting proposal. Here, however, I will focus on the proposal made by Buenting and Taylor, and later by M. Dentith and Brian Keeley. The authors distinguish between generalists and particularists. The former would claim that we can assess conspiracy theories without considering particular theories. The latter would claim that we should evaluate particular conspiracy theories on their individual merits. The authors, it seems to me, equate the generalist view with the view that all conspiracy theories should be rejected on epistemic grounds, and the particularist view with the view that we should not reject all conspiracy theories. But I do not think these characterizations are appropriate. I see at least 3 problems. First of all, there seems to be no reason to think that we can reject or accept a given conspiracy theory solely because of its lack of epistemic rationality. Philosophers, for instance, have also given reasons for rejecting conspiracy theories because of their moral vices or because of the pragmatic futility of being engaged in conspiratorial theorizing. Other authors have hinted at other viewpoints such as economical, psychological, or legal. Thus, we can assess conspiracy theories from other viewpoints than the epistemic one. A second and more important problem with Buenting and Taylor's characterization is that the question of how we should assess conspiracy theories is distinct from the question of how general our assessment should be. The latter question concerns the degree of generality. The former concerns the evaluative attitude toward conspiracy theories. And one can give an answer to the former question without committing oneself to an answer to the latter. I think M. Dentith and Brian Keeley had something very similar in mind when they wrote, "It is logically possible that there could be generalists who argue that all conspiracy theories are warranted, but we can find no examples of academics espousing such a view. Nor do I know anyone who holds this view, but the mere logical possibility suffices to argue against Buenting and Taylor's characterizations. What is more, there also exists the logical possibility of rejecting every conspiracy theory as unwarranted, but arriving at that conclusion through inductive examination of particular conspiracy theories. This is a particularist view, but one that is skeptical of the warrantedness of conspiracy theories. Of course, you can also reject all conspiracy theories in a generalist manner, believing, for example, that conspiracy theories should be rejected by definition. And lastly, you can think that some conspiracy theories are warranted and reach this conclusion from a particularist point of view. Finally, the third problem with the quoted characterization is that there is not only the possibility of criticizing or admiring some conspiracy theories, but also of remaining neutral in view of whether we should reject or welcome such theories. Taking into account the considerations just made, we can formulate a more fine-grained framework. We have to differentiate between different viewpoints of assessment. We can assess conspiracy theories from epistemic, moral, pragmatic, economic, or psychological viewpoints. Certainly, there are more such viewpoints. Further, there are 2 degrees of generality. Generalist positions in this new sense assume that there is normative property or a set of normative properties common to all conspiracy theories. Particularist positions, in this new sense, deny the generalist claim. For particularists, there is no such normative property or a set of such normative properties. And lastly, there are three evaluative attitudes toward conspiracy theories. Repressivist positions emphasize the biases of conspiracy theories with regard to different viewpoints of assessment. Permissibilist positions, on the other hand, accentuate the vices and the virtues, or just the virtues of conspiracy theories with regard to different viewpoints of assessment. I borrowed the terms repressivism and permissibilism from the German sociologist Oliver Kuhn, but I also used these words differently from the author. In addition, there are or could be neutralist positions which claim to say nothing about the vices or virtues of conspiracy theories. These positions remain purely descriptive. Taking these distinctions together, the following picture emerges. This is a possibility space in which one can adopt an attitude toward conspiracy theories. Okay, against the background of this picture, I would like to introduce a thesis that will serve as the starting point for my main thesis in this talk. This is my starting point. Most of today's interdisciplinary research on conspiracy theories is dominated by a generalist-repressivist research program, GRP for short, the hardcore of which is as follows. Conspiracy theories have to be rejected solely on the grounds that these theories are conspiracy theories. And of course, we see here a generalist element insofar as this claim refers to all conspiracy theories, as well as a repressivist element insofar as this claim is a plea for the rejection of conspiracy theories. Of course, I have to give some reasons for assuming that this starting point is correct. However, since I want to focus on my main thesis, I will not have enough time to do that. If you would like evidence in support of this starting point, please email me and I can send you a list of quotes that at least suggest that this thesis is correct. In any case, in my research, I came to the conclusion that this is the case. Here, I have to presuppose this. By using the term research program, I refer, of course, to the basic idea of Imre Lakatov's philosophy of science. Okay, what is my main thesis in this talk? It goes as follows. The GRP implies a fundamentally flawed picture of conspiracy theories that is epistemically detrimental and dangerous in terms of social cohesion. The GRP should therefore be overcome in favor of a particularist permissibilist research program. Before I clarify and justify my thesis, I would like to make some remarks about the focus of my presentation. I will focus only on conspiracy theories that exist only in Germany and only on the German language GRP research. I will do this not only because I think these conspiracy theories and conspiracy theories would be interesting for research outside Germany, but also because I have the impression that the GRP is more dominant in Germany than in other countries. What is more, I think that the German part of the GRP research is more stubborn and suffers from more failures than other parts. Here's how I would like to proceed. First, I will present a critique by David Cody of the international psychological research on conspiracy theories. Subsequently, I will ask whether this critique is convincing by applying it to the German part of the GRP. Although I will criticize some of Cody's claims, I will next use one of his observations in order to formulate two of my own arguments against the GRP. Cody has expressed his critique in many texts. Here, I will confine myself to his 2019 work, Psychology and Conspiracy Theories. I start with the mentioned observation. Cody says that at least some psychologists who work on conspiracy theories divide the population into two groups of people. Those who believe conspiracy theories, the test group, and those who don't, the control group. Not only from this, but also from this, he then draws the conclusion that the work of at least some psychologists is pseudoscientific. Cody makes an alternative proposal to generalist-repressivist research. He writes, my position is that ideally we should avoid using the terms conspiracy theories and conspiracy theorists altogether. Some call this position eliminativism, but not in the sense of the eliminativism described by Brian Keeley in his keynote. I would now like to begin by examining Cody's critique by asking whether his observation is correct. So, do the adherents of the German-speaking part of the GRP divide the population into those who believe in conspiracy theories and those who don't? The answer is clearly yes. Consider, for example, this result of a study by the Research Data and Analytics Group, YouGov. Of course, the study's authors are not talking about conspiracy theories, but about conspiracy myths. But empirical scientists from Germany use such conclusions to argue that those who believe in conspiracy theories drift into a parallel universe. It is reasonable to suppose that conspiracy theories and conspiracy myths are used synonymously by these proponents of the GRP, since the examples these proponents talk about are exactly the same ones that are usually called conspiracy theories. But if the said empirical scientists assume that 1/3 of Germans do believe in conspiracy theories, they must assume that 2/3 do not believe in any conspiracy theory. And the speech of parallel universe seems to make sense only if one presupposes that there is a universe that cannot be called parallel. The mentioned division is also made quite explicit, for example, by the cultural scientist Michael Butter. These and other examples show that there is strong evidence that Cody's observation about the division of the population by many researchers seems to apply not only to the psychological research, but also to the German-speaking part of the GRP. But what about Cody's conclusion? Is the German part of the GRP research pseudoscientific? I don't think so. One problem with this conclusion is that it presupposes the solution of the demarcation problem, but such solution does not yet exist. There are other problems as well. So while I don't agree with Cody's conclusions, I do think that his observation is right and that this observation exposes the insurmountable problems with the GRP. Although I think there are many of them, I will confine myself to only two. I will again illustrate my arguments with examples from the German-speaking part of the GRP. I begin with what I call the performative contradiction problem. What is a performative contradiction? Consider the following utterances. I cannot speak, I'm sleeping, I passed out. At least when these utterances are not used metaphorically, not elliptically, not ironically, and at least in some sense, 1 to 3 are contradictory. One cannot utter 1, 2, or 3 when one cannot speak, is sleeping, or passed out. However, it is not a classic contradiction. The situation is more like this. The act of uttering conflicts with the propositional content of the utterances. By saying one cannot speak, one undermines the uttered proposition. Now, I would like to bring together Cody's observation and the idea of performative contradiction in order to show that the German language part of GRP suffers from a performative contradiction. I will do this by giving some examples that provide a good inductive basis for generalizing my argument to all German language GRP research. Let's first examine some quotes from German-speaking research literature. The psychologist Pia Lamberti and the political scientist Katharina Nokun write in their book Fake Facts that conspiracy theorists adhere to black and white thinking. Although the authors speak of conspiracy ideology, they mean the conspiracy theorists. The English scholar Katrin Götz-Forteler and cultural historian Simone Hespers claim that conspiracy theorists believe in an us versus them narrative and think along the lines of anyone who is not for us is against us. In Michael Butter's book, Nothing is as It Seems, we read something quite similar. Butter speaks of Manichaean worldview, meaning exactly what the political scientist Armin Traugbar means by dualistic worldview. The speech of black and white, us versus them, Manichaean or dualistic worldview are realizations of the same motive. The conspiracy theorists would draw the line between themselves and those who don't believe in their conspiracy theories. However, the researchers cited not only assert this, but accuse conspiracy theorists of painting an oversimplified picture of social reality, which is bad epistemic behavior. The underlying argument then seems to be the following one. First premise, conspiracy theorists draw a line between them and those who don't believe in their conspiracy theories. Second, drawing such a line is a bad epistemic behavior. And the conclusion is the epistemic behavior of conspiracy theorists is bad. The proponents of GRP accuse conspiracy theorists of painting a black and white picture of society. But Is the picture these proponents paint more colorful? When the GRP proponents assert premise P1 as they do in the quoted passages, they presuppose that they can draw a line between the conspiracy theorists and those who don't believe in conspiracy theories. In my view, it is pretty clear that this picture itself is black and white. In other words, by saying that conspiracy theorists cleave to a clear distinction between them and the rest, the proponents of GRP cleave to the distinction between the conspiracy theorists and the rest. Of course, this distinction is not one between the good and the bad, but between epistemically rational and irrational. But this is just another form of trying to draw a clear-cut distinction between people. And if this is bad epistemic behavior, as claimed in P2, the cited proponents of the GRP must face the charge of committing the performative contradiction. The occurrence of contradictions usually gives sufficient reason to doubt a theory or program. So based on Cody's observation, we have found a sufficiently good reason to be skeptical of GRP. I now turn to the second problem with the GRP. While the first problem falls into the category of argumentative errors, the second problem concerns the societal consequences of the distinction made by the proponents of GRP and observed by Cody between conspiracy theorists and the rest. I'll start again with a quote from a proponent of the GRP. Tobias Meilicke is a political scientist and head of the German non-profit organization Veritas. On a TV show, Meilicke was asked why the German experts are reluctant to speak of conspiracy theories and prefer instead to speak of conspiracy narratives. Meilicke answered, well, because a theory should actually meet a scientific standard. The scientific standard is this theory is falsifiable. But when you talk to conspiracy believers, no matter how many arguments you present against their theory, these arguments are always reinterpreted as part of the conspiracy. Meilicke's claim is problematic in many respects, but the most serious problem is his prediction that counter-arguments against conspiracy theories would be reinterpreted by its proponents. On what evidential basis could such a claim be verified? Obviously, this is an empirical claim that requires surveys and statistical studies with a sufficiently representative sample to substantiate it. Meilicke makes no mention of such empirical work at any point. This could be seen simply as a gap in the argument, but that is not all. From this unwarranted prediction, Meilicke seems to derive the advice that one should not argue with conspiracy theorists. He says, this will not work. It will only lead to frustration and conflict. Apart from the fact that Meilicke provides no reasons for this empirical claim either, this claim is highly divisive. We can see this by asking ourselves, in what paradigmatic cases should we not argue? For example, when we have a disagreement with a young child, it is often, not always, but often, useless to provide arguments. All parents have had this experience. Arguments also bounce off adults who are in a psychotic episode or are very drunk. And under these circumstances, it seems reasonable to assume that arguments will not work. But most conspiracy theorists are adults. Most conspiracy theorists are mostly not psychotic. The majority of psychologists agree on this. And most conspiracy theorists are not drunk, at least most of their lives either. Conspiracy theorists base their theories on arguments they consider conclusive and on evidence they consider confirmatory of their theories. Certainly not all of these arguments should be considered convincing, and not all of the evidence should be considered good evidence. But to principally deny conspiracy theorists the ability to be amenable to arguments without providing any reason for such a principal denial seems to be an intellectual elevation above a large segment of the population. Such an elevation is highly unfounded and not at all honest. Thus, when Meilicke advises against arguing with conspiracy theorists, he seems to be dividing people into those who are amenable to arguments and those who are immune to them. Of course, this is merely another realization of the division Cody has pointed to. Meilicke's advice demonstrates the typical attitude of GRP proponents, which is to refuse to meet arguments with counter-arguments. In my view, however, such a refusal is identical to the plea for a restriction of the culture of debate that we love and seek to retain in a democratic society. I conclude. Even if not all of Cody's arguments are convincing, his observation that psychologists divide society into conspiracy theorists and the rest is correct. However, this observation applies not only to psychology, but also to German language research within the GRP, and I suspect to the GRP research outside Germany too. And if Cody is right that this division is unworkable, then all members of our society are simply denied the ability to be open to arguments. This seems absurd. In any case, however, such a division and denial harm societal cohesion. So what now? What should we do now? I think we should develop a particularist permissibilist research program, P3. In the remaining 8 minutes, I would like to give a very brief sketch of this idea. First of all, we can formulate the hard core of the new program. It goes as follows. The credibility of a theory T is independent of whether T is a conspiracy theory. Here, we have a particularist element present insofar as we see no assumption of shared normative properties, and we have a permissibilist element present insofar as we see no emphasis on the vicious properties of conspiracy theories. Of course, in constructing such a program, we should also say something about how we treat the words conspiracy theory and related expressions. I see two possibilities. First, we can adopt Cody's eliminativism, but I do not think this is the best option because this position seems unnecessarily radical. I think it is possible to formulate a neutral definition of conspiracy theory and related expressions while taking Cody's critique into account. The following definition, for instance, seems reasonable to me. T is a conspiracy theory about event E if and only if A. T is a theory that explains D. Caution. This does not mean that the explanation T implies is a true or good explanation. It only means that T tries to explain E. B. In order to explain E, T postulates that at least two persons plan and or perform one or more acts in secret. And second, the act or acts are planned and or performed to the disadvantage of third parties. The last two conditions, of course, define the concept of a conspiracy. The classical conceptions of conspiracies also include surprise parties, and Dented explicitly treats surprise parties as conspiracies. However, I think it is more in line with our intuitions to exclude surprise parties, and I think this definition does that. More important than the definition of conspiracy theory in P3 is its interdisciplinary nature. This program is designed to be very interdisciplinary, but within P3 we have a very strict division of labor. The idea is this. Philosophy formulates formal conditions of acceptability. That is, philosophy formulates an epistemology of acceptability and defines key concepts. And the empirical social sciences test whether these conditions are met. Let me illustrate this idea very briefly. Let us first consider the philosophical side. We can begin by starting quite abstractly from a disagreement between conspiracy theories and official or scientific theories. And now the hard philosophical work begins. We need to clarify what it means to have a genuine disagreement. What is the proper definition of a genuine disagreement? What are important differences between the various types of genuine disagreements, and so on? We also need to clarify what it means that there is evidence in favor of one side or the other. That does not mean that we have to examine whether there is evidence. This is an empirical question. No, we have to clarify what it means that there is evidence. Then we must take into account that not all evidence is available to all epistemic subjects. For example, there might be evidence that is only available to experts. Therefore, we need higher order evidence, that is, evidence that supports the belief that there is first order evidence. Philosophers have described some kinds of such higher order evidence. So this picture illustrates the idea of formal conditions of acceptability. Now let us consider the empirical side of the P3. To this end, I would like to present two cases from Germany in which theories treated as conspiracy theories play a decisive role. The first case I call Reichsbürger. Although Germany has been considered a sovereign state at least since the signing of the 2+4 treaties in 1990, there are various groups of individuals who doubt Germany's sovereignty. For example, so-called Reichsbürger see themselves as citizens of the German Reich. According to most political scientists, this group is characterized by the conspiracy theory that the German people are being deceived by foreign powers. Among other things, the group argues that there was no peace treaty after World War II, that the Constitution Grundgesetz is not a real constitution, and that Germany is actually a corporation. Political science and legal history contradict these arguments. According to our neutral definition, we have to say that only the Reichsbürger theory is a conspiracy theory. Let's look at a second example, the second case, which I named NSU complex. The German term NSU complex refers to the crimes committed by the right-wing terrorist group National Socialist Underground, NSU for short, the background of these crimes and the course of investigations into them. The crimes included the murder of 9 people perceived by the NSU as foreigners and a police officer. Although a court has found that the NSU consisted only of Uwe Böhnhardt, Beate Zschäpe, and Uwe Mundlos, who allegedly planned and executed the crimes, this is the alone theory. Lawyers for the survivors and journalists, among others, doubt this finding. They rely on evidence suggesting that the NSU was intentionally and or unintentionally supported by state agencies insofar as state officials destroyed records believed to contain data about the NSU. This is the help theory. Such conjectures are treated as conspiracy theories in the media. According to our definition, and in contrast to the first case, we must treat both the help theory and the alone theory as conspiracy theories here. Okay, let's apply the idea of the P3 to the first example. According to the formal requirement of this idea, we must start from the observation that the Reichsbürger theory contradicts the official theory. I think it's pretty clear that we need second-order evidence here, since most of us are not experts in legal history. And if we investigate these second-order evidence empirically, I believe that we will get this picture. A survey conducted by the German Federal Criminal Police Office in cooperation with the German Domestic Intelligence Service in late 2020 found that about 20,000 people held the Reichsbürger view, but the total population in Germany at that time was about 85 million. So we know that more people adhere to the official story, but we also know that more experts adhere to the official story, provided, of course, that the term experts is clearly defined. The other points are more controversial, but I think the assumption is plausible that the belief in the official story is more convincing. Finally, let us consider the application to the second example. Again, we have to start from the observation that there is a disagreement between the alone theory and the official help theory. Again, we need higher order evidence. And now we see that the empirical situation is much less clear than in the first case, because there are no surveys about how many people defend which theory. There are no studies about who the experts are and how many experts hold which theory. There is no empirical evidence on whether the experts work independently from each other and so on. This unclear situation suggests, I want to claim, that we should suspend judgment as to which side is right in this dispute. And of course, this temporary result is completely different from rejecting the help theory or the alone theory, simply because the definition mentioned above treats these theories as conspiracy theories. And this fits in very well with the hardcore of the P3. From my point of view, this is a very satisfactory result. Maybe not for you, which is good, because in this case, we have something to discuss. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel, for a fantastic talk. I must admit, I was very keen on the definition of conspiracy theory that you've generated there, even though no one wants to allow surprise parties to be examples of conspiracy theories. Be the only person who seems to be defining the surprise party here. Now, to the attendees, please put your questions into the Q&A system so that Brian and I can sort through them. Whilst we wait for those questions to come in, one of the things which often comes up when I'm talking with German academics about conspiracy theory is this argument that in German, the term conspiracy theory means just by definition an irrational or unwarranted theory.
Yeah.
So you can't do the English thing of it could be true. It's just by by asserting it's a conspiracy theory, it must be false. Would you say that within the German tradition, you'd have to define a new term? Or do you think that that argument itself is evidence of this kind of generalist repressive program?
Yeah, in Germany we have the tendency that that some experts don't want to use the word conspiracy theories and prefer instead conspiracy narratives, because they think that theories are scientific theories and scientific theories have to be falsifiable. This is a very bad argument, and this argument is bad because it ignores the research in the philosophy of science of the last 80 years or so. And there is another expert, Michael Butter, I've quoted him. He's an expert in American history, and he says that such discussion as we have in Germany, whether we should say conspiracy theory or conspiracy narratives, we have nowhere in the world. And this is a nonsense discussion. This is a seem to be discussion. This is not a real, genuine discussion. So I do think that this idea that we should not use the term conspiracy theory in Germany, beneath this, or this idea, the foundation of this idea, of this argument, is a very bad argument.
Yeah. All right. So our first question comes from Kurt, who asks, are the German legal prohibitions on the most dangerous historical conspiracy theories working, or are they counterproductive?
Yeah. I don't know whether there are some legal prohibitions. We have in our laws, there are no term. I know of no law, text or legal text that contain the word conspiracy theory.
Right, so Kurt clarifies discussion of things like Holocaust denial and the like. Yeah. So the prohibition of those particular views.
Yeah. It's interesting question. Yeah, it's right. In Germany, it is forbidden to deny Holocaust. Yeah. But I think it is a different question from the question of whether. So maybe philosophers have to analyze the concrete denial of a Holocaust. So if when one says that, well, I don't know whether the Holocaust have taken place, but I think the scientists, the historians, and so on, want to deceive us. Well, I don't really know whether this claim would be seen as unlegal in Germany. I think there have to be made a lot of analytical work, conceptual analytical work. So I'm sorry, but I cannot answer this question very clearly.
That's okay. Now, before we move over to Rico's question, Nikki says, very interesting talk. Could you please show the references again? So if you could share your screen and put those references up, we'll move on to Rico's question whilst you do that. So I'll just give you a second to allow you to not have to worry about multitasking.
One moment.
That's right.
So You can see the references now? Oh.
We can, yeah. As you've just skipped past the references.
No, this is an automatic. I'm sorry, this is an.
Oh, okay. Maybe you can paste them into the chat later on. So Rico asks, thanks for the nice talk. Why do you think it is the GRP is so popular? Is there a relationship between its popularity in science and the bad reputation of CTs in the public? If so, what is the causal direction of the influence? Do conspiracy theories have a bad reputation because of the influence of the GRP, or could it not be the other way around too?
I think the GRP is popular because, in part, not only, but in part, because those who adhere to the GRP are not philosophers. So I think that those who adhere to GRP argue in the following way. They take a paradigmatic examples of conspiracy theories, such as moon landing fake, such as a reptilian reptiloids, or I don't know what is the right word in English for these creatures.
So sometimes they're called reptiloids, sometimes they're called reptilians.
Yeah, and I think the most, not only, but not all, maybe not all, but the most adherents of GRP take paradigmatic examples of conspiracy theories and say, well, look, these examples are unjustified, I mean, epistemically unjustified. Well, I would agree, of course. But then they generalize to all conspiracy theories. And I think we as philosophers have to say, no, this generalization. So even if the proponents of GRP are right in claiming that the epistemic behavior of such paradigmatic conspiracy theorists is bad, we have to show that, yeah, it's right, but the generalization is not justified. And I think this is in part explanation why the GRP is so popular, because of this wrong generalization.
I mean, it's quite interesting when you think about because you made the point. It's mostly social scientists who are propounding the GRP in the German-speaking world, and we've had a fair number of German philosophers at this conference advocating for particular approaches. So, is this more of a problem of the social sciences in the EU generally, or is Germany a particularly bad example in the EU?
It's a good question. As I said, I think the German part of the GRP is more stubborn, and I think the GRP is dominant. It's the dominant research program everywhere in the world. No, I don't think that this is a problem that is found only in Germany. I think that, but in Germany, the GRP is more stubborn, I think.
All right, so there's obviously some kind of cultural thing going on along with that research program at the same time.
Yeah, this is similar to the belief that scientific theories, or the sine qua non of scientific theories is their falsifiability, and this is a myth, and this myth is and scientists, natural scientists all over the world make or think in this way, and this is the wrong way, I think, and the philosophers, I think, have to say that this is the wrong way. So it's similar, a little bit similar.
Excellent. Thank you. That was a wonderful talk. I'm going to stop the recording now and we'll get ready for our next talk. So thank you once again. Thank you.